What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Before and After. And if you're new to this series, it's a video where I like to give you my thoughts before I see a movie and then after I see a movie. Because sometimes you go into one of them and you're just like, man, this movie's gonna be super awesome, and then you leave it utterly disappointed. So with this series, you can actually see both of those emotions if that actually happens from the movie. And this week's episode, this isn't even a weekly thing, but this episode is going to be about Ghost in the Shell, the upcoming Scarlett Johansson movie. I am going to see it tonight, and this video will more than likely be up tomorrow. But what I'm saying is, I am really excited for this movie. Now, two things I should talk about right before I say anything else is, one, totally had a brain fart the moment I did this, but what I was going to say is that I've only ever seen one Ghost in the Shell anime, and I think there's like multiple movies if I'm not mistaken. I've only seen one. I enjoyed it, but I'm not like a super big anime fan about this series, and when I heard Scarlett Johansson was gonna be in this movie, I was like, I don't really know how I feel about that, because look, I love me, and I mean, I love me some freaking Scarlett Johansson, and I've seen a lot of her movies. I will watch any of her movies, but man, the last movie that she did that was kind of like this was Lucy, and Lucy was awful. So bad. If you guys haven't seen Lucy, super big spoiler right here, she like takes some drugs or whatever, and then she starts getting powers, and then at the end of the movie, she literally like transforms into a USB. What? So, color me worried when I freaking heard that Scarlett Johansson's gonna be in another freaking sci-fi kind of, epic adventure kind of movie, because I just don't know with her sometimes. But, there is a lot of source material for this. It wasn't just an idea out of somebody's head like Lucy. So, I'm a little bit more interested and a little bit, optimistic for this movie. The second thing I want to point out is the whole whitewashing of this character, because this is a movie that takes place, in, I believe, Tokyo. It should be like an all, Japanese cast, and like just everything, and it's like a Japanese-centric story, and then they just like cast like the whitest starlet that we could put in Scarlett Johansson. And, I get why they did it, and I want to talk about this because on this channel, you guys have heard me multiple times talk about inclusion in movies. And this situation, I'm in like a gray area, and I feel like I'm in a gray area a lot of the times. And I want to say the real reason why I'm talking about this is because I just read an article. I shouldn't say I read the article. I read the first paragraph and skimmed the rest of it because the article was utter garbage, and it was a review for this movie, and I wasn't going to read the whole thing, but I just literally read the first paragraph because the headline was like, freaking Ghost in the Shell is everything that is wrong with Hollywood. And I was like, this is going to be a piece. Sure enough, the first paragraph was just garbage, and you could just feel the hatred of whitewashing in this article, and I was all like, I'm not even gonna freaking read the rest of this. And here's my issue with the movie, or like my stance on this whole movie and the whole like this article thing is, yes, I on this channel talk about inclusion a lot. You hear me talk about it with the Marvel movies, and I'm all like, why the hell isn't there an Asian or a Latino superhero yet in that freaking universe, because it's been around for 10 plus years or whatever. Like, you will hear me constantly talk about that until we get a solid superhero in that freaking universe. And I'm talking about the movies, not the damn shows. But even though I talk about that kind of stuff, I do not judge movies solely off freaking characters of color being in them. This article pissed me off because it's articles like this that totally hurt me trying to talk about this situation. Because I know it might not be you watching this, but somebody out there at one time, when I say Marvel needs to cast more people of color, somebody was like, this guy, he's one of those dudes that freaking, oh, everything's gotta have less white people in it. I know there are people out there like that because it's articles like this one I just read today, or I should say skimmed today. It's because there's so much hatred in those articles, so people just automatically hate anybody that wants to talk about inclusion. And I'm all like, look, I've mentioned it many, many times in videos and on streams. Some of my favorite movies and shows have all white casts. I love Friends. Tell me if there's any people of color in that show. No, it's 6 white people. But I've seen every season like 10 times. Another one, actually I'll give you 2 of my favorite movies. Freaking Dumb and Dumber, my all-time favorite movie of all time. I said it twice because it's that good. All white cast. And freaking Zombieland is also one of my favorite movies, all white cast. And I love those freaking movies. And I'm somebody that wants to see people of color in freaking movies. But I ain't judging them off of that like this article. So my whole point when it comes to this whole thing is I'm not going to judge this whole movie off of Scarlett Johansson being the lead. Could they have cast and should they have cast a freaking Asian actor for this? Yes, they totally should have done that because that's the source material. So what I'm basically saying is I'm not going to judge this movie off of their casting of Scarlett Johansson. And I got to be, it's a two-way street on this. I can't be a hypocrite and be like, look, I want freaking comic books to change their damn source material because every character is f***ing white in comic books, so eventually they just need to change it to give me like a freaking brown character in there, unless they're gonna go ahead and build up another character and have them take the place of like Captain America or somebody like that. That's the only other way they can do it, kind of like how Marvel's doing right now in their comic books. But like I said, it's a freaking two-way street. So if I want more people of color and they're gonna have to change source material of other stuff, I can't be over here and be like, oh yeah, oh no, you can't change this anime because it's all freaking Japanese characters. You can't put a white person in there. You can't have it both ways, guys. You can't. So you gotta be open to it in every way. And also, this was a huge freaking business decision. Scarlett Johansson sells freaking tickets. So, you put Scarlett Johansson as a lead in a movie, she's going to sell tickets. You make the movie look badass, it's going to make money. So, that's exactly what they did here. There's not a lot of known Asian actors, which it is a problem in Hollywood, that there's not a lot of, known Asian actors out there that would be able to carry a movie or have the star power of Scarlett Johansson. Now, you do need to start giving Asian and Latinos more freaking stage presence so they can start becoming stars. That is a whole different topic. But for this particular situation, I understand why they did it. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear because I feel like sometimes everyone thinks that I'm all like, every role needs to be a person of color. No, no, that would be boring as hell. I want just diversity in movies. And like I said, it's a freaking two-way street. So I'm not upset about this movie. I know a lot of people are upset about it. It's like the source material, blah, 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 blah. You can't have it both ways, guys. You people out there that are writing these freaking hated articles about this freaking kind of shit, you can't have it both ways. I can't say it enough. Anyways, let me just tell you how I feel about this movie so we can jump to the after part of this freaking video. I'm excited for this movie. It looks gorgeous. Like, I saw the trailer for this and I was like, what? Those freaking geisha robots look so badass. The character style looks so badass. Scarlett Johansson looks so badass and sexy at the same time, but she always does that no matter what she's freaking doing. And man, it just looks like it's going to be a solid film. I'm just hoping that it's going to be one. The runtime is like an hour and 46 minutes, which is hella short. And I'm just like, what? It doesn't even get near 2 hours. And so that kind of worries me because sometimes short movies are not that great. Or I should say that runtime is usually for like comedies and stuff. But I don't know, an action movie with a short runtime kind of worries me a bit because maybe it feels like they didn't have enough source material, and which they should, and at the same time, maybe they were just kind of stretching things out to even get to that runtime. So that kind of worries me. But this movie looks gorgeous. I like the cast. The storyline looks really great. And I'm really excited to see this movie because I am a sucker for visuals. Like, I love to just feel like I'm in another world when it comes to movies. And that's the reason why I'm so freaking big on acting when it comes to movies. One of the reasons why I wasn't big on Power Rangers, because it was just so bad in my eyes that I was just like, you're taking me out of this universe, people! So I'll be going into this movie thinking that it is visually beautiful. I think the acting is going to be on par, and I think the action is going to be great. So what's really left is just the storytelling and making sure that I can feel for these characters, because you can have great acting, but that doesn't mean that just because you're a great actor it means you're going to make me feel for your character, because the story goes along with that. So I'm just kind of hoping everything just, it's in a pot and it's stirred really well and I just like eat it up at the end of this freaking movie. But we'll see right now. I'm back. I should mention that it's like 1 in the morning. I caught a late showing of this movie on Thursday night. And I should mention a couple of things before I get into the review of the movie. As I was leaving the theater and kind of as I was watching the movie, I felt like this movie was just very average, in my opinion. But there's something that I kind of like want to really dive into about that, and that I might have some issues on why I thought it was average. When I was watching this movie, I was all like, did I ever really watch this anime? Because I was barely connecting anything. And I think I watched it once, or maybe I started to watch it and I didn't finish it, because I wasn't connecting a lot of dots like I usually do when it comes to source material I've seen before and then watching a live action version of it. So I want to say it's either been really, really long since I saw this anime, and usually I don't like to refresh my brain on these things because I'm like, alright, you don't know that much about it, so freaking, this is the perfect time to watch a live action movie. That way you're not that guy that's all like, well, we didn't do this, the freaking anime did this, and blah, blah, blah. Because I am that guy at times. I am freaking like that when I was watching the Hunger Games and like that, and I was reading the books at the same time. I was all like, well, the books didn't do this, and this, and this, and this. And like, I hate doing that, so I really like when I have a separation of the source material and the freaking movie, because it lets me enjoy both. And I'm actually kind of the person that likes to see the movie first and then watch the book, because the book always has so much more information. I feel like I just enjoy it so much better when I read it after I've seen the movie, and I get to enjoy them both. So I was trying to use that mentality, and that's why I didn't want to rewatch the animes before I watched this. But now I'm kind of thinking that that was a bad idea. I feel like maybe I would have enjoyed this movie more had I watched the anime before I went to go see it, because I would have been able to maybe catch a lot of the Easter eggs. I might have been able to catch I would have just felt like I would have known a little bit more about these characters. So I'm kind of saying I might have myself right there. Then again, I could be that person that's like, well, the anime was so much better, dude. Like, oh my god, I totally want to just, I just gonna watch the anime all the time. So I don't know. And the last thing I want to mention before I go into this review is when I got to the theater, I was kind of sleepy. And a sleepy juice is not a good juice, because I feel like I don't get to be 100% in this freaking movie. Like, cause I was like, man, I kind of want to go to bed. But then I was like, oh no, the movie's right here. So I literally, at the start of this movie, did feel kind of tired. And I was like, oh man, I don't feel like I'm going to do this. I hate this. This blows. And I almost thought about leaving because I was kind of tired. So, but I did really get to enjoy this movie as it started going and it started picking up. I just wanted to mention all of those things before I dive into this review, because, there are factors that might have swayed or why I've thought something because of those factors. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into this movie. One thing I have to say from the start, because it's one of the things I thought going into this movie, visually, this movie looks great. I mean, it just looks amazing. The effects, the freaking style, it is very like cyberpunk kind of shit, and I like that kind of stuff. So it was pretty awesome, and like I said, that's one thing I knew this movie was going to give me, and it was Scarlett Johansson, sexy as like always. I mean, I've always loved me some Scarlett Johansson, so seeing her in this movie was just, I already knew those things were going to be perfect, and those things were perfect. Moving on to the acting, and this is where it gets really interesting, because I thought the acting was good. It wasn't like when I saw Power Rangers and I was like, oh, I'm out of the story. No, I was in the story the whole time, but the interesting thing, and I thought everybody in this movie did really great in their acting style, but the one thing I do want to mention is I felt like I was in a weird place, because at times I wanted there to be like more emotion from Scarlett Johansson. I was like, give me some more emotion, like, come on! And I think that's just the wannabe director in me. I'm like, I need more emotion from you. You're not making me feel the freaking emotions. But I gotta remember, as I was watching this movie, and I had to keep telling myself, I'm like, bro, she's a android. It's just her brain that's human. Everything else is robotic. so she's only gonna have so much emotions, and I constantly had to keep telling myself that when I wanted more emotion from Scarlett Johansson's character. So I think she did a really solid job as a freaking cyborg person thingamabob. Apologies, I think I just said cyborg and android, which are kind of totally two different things, but I think I meant she's an android? I'm just gonna say she's a robot. Either way, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. I think they could have done a little bit more with the character to dive into, like, I'm like so torn right now about, like, I'm like, well, maybe they did enough because she's a freaking robot, so she's not gonna feel, like, I don't know. I feel like they could have dove into her past a little bit more. Like, you kind of, you find out what she was or whatever before this, and you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool, but I feel like if we would have got a little bit more, that could have made the story a little bit better. But, I mean, as far as, like, the acting in here, because that's one big thing I preach when I come to my movie reviews, I thought the acting was pretty solid. But it makes you freaking think, though, about the whole emotion thing. If you're one of those people that likes to see the emotion from actors, this one is kind of a mindfuck because you're really thinking about only the brain works. The brain is the only thing human, and I don't know about you guys, but when you feel emotions, it's usually like, oh my god, your heart's beating, you freaking got butterflies in your stomach. Does that happen with somebody that's got a freaking... Only the brain is human, because you can think about having butterflies in your stomach, but does that mean you feel them? Because you're not feeling them in your brain, you feel them in your belly. I don't know how science is but that's the one thing I was literally thinking about with this movie. Which brings me to my next thing and makes me question if I really thought this movie was average, was I'm still thinking about this movie as I'm filming this. Like, this movie has made me think, and I do like to actually feel that when I leave a movie. Like, if a movie can make me keep thinking about the movie afterwards, and it wasn't like, oh my god, this movie was so bad, how could they even got a director, like, who the hell wrote this, like, and it's not those kind of thoughts, but it's making me think about the concept of the movie. I really put a lot of stock in that, because I'm actually just, like, perplexed and, like, so interested in that I'm like, oh, you know, this movie might have been really solid. Now, going on to the story, which is, like, the next big thing, I thought that was very average. I didn't think anything, like, too crazy about it. When, I guess, you know, when Major, who is Scarlett Johansson's character, starts finding out about her past and stuff, I thought it could have been a little bit maybe more dramatic or a little bit more intense. But I don't know if, she really couldn't show those kind of emotions, you know, because I don't know if she would feel that. I don't know if you just think, I don't know. It's these questions, and I want to know what your guys' thoughts on that whole situation is. Maybe you've seen the anime, and they kind of explain that kind of stuff. I don't know. But yeah, so I thought the story could have been a little bit better. I felt like they had something there, and they were putting it together, but I felt like it could have been a little bit more intense. Like, I feel like there was just something that was missing a little bit. Like, the story was okay, but I felt like they could have done a little bit more different things to kind of, like, hammer that, like, even though she's this freaking android or whatever, I think they could have still made us feel a little bit more for those characters. So that is the one thing I will say, the story was kind of average to me, even with the nice visuals and solid acting. Moving on to the action and villain, and the one thing I will say about the action was I was expecting more, and that might be because I'm spoiled by the John Wicks of the world, and that action is just, like, so over the top that I'm like, yeah, I want more! That maybe other shooting movies are just not as cool, but I think this one could have still had its own style in fighting, but it just didn't wow me with the action, and I was kind of expecting more from, you know, this thing. But then again, like I said, I don't know, that might have not been a big thing in the actual anime, and that's kind of where I keep telling myself, I'm like, you probably should have watched this before you went to see this damn movie. There was one part which it looked really cool in the trailers, but then as you're actually watching it on screen, I was kind of like, I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it, where she's actually fighting, she's invisible, and you see her fighting, but it just looked like a guy getting his ass kicked by a ghost, and, which, I mean, it fits for the movie because it's called Ghost in the Shell, but, I don't know, I wish I would have seen her fighting a little bit more in this area. So that was kind of weird, but, you know. Another reason I was underwhelmed with the action in this movie was the ending was, like, the major, like, fight at the end seemed like a video game boss battle. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this happened in the anime, but it literally felt like a video game boss battle. and it just felt really weird. Like, they were fighting in a circular, like, dome, and she had a gun, and you're fighting a big old robot spider monster thing, and I was like, why did this happen in a video game? Because I feel like I've seen this or played this before. As for the villain, you get one in Coos, who is played by Michael Pitt, and he did it very well, but he was a villain type because, you know, this movie had one of those things where the villain wasn't really actually the villain because the real villain is society and all that kind of shit. It was actually a corporation, but, you know, corporations are even bad in today's society, so who's really the villain, you know what I'm saying? So it was totally one of those switcheroo storylines. But it fit with this movie and what it did. Like, the villain that, you know, in Coos was portrayed very well, and he had a reason for being a villain, which was already pretty awesome. And then, of course, like I said, there was that whole, like, symbolism of, like, corporations and big business are really the big villain in this whole situation. And that's another one of those things about this movie that makes me think, because Ghost in the Shell, I should say, is, you know, just, it really makes you think about what's going on in today's world, especially here in America. And I know a lot of people were talking about how this movie is getting Americanized and everything, but this story did fit really well with America times right now, especially politics right now. You are seeing big business just push their will onto society and be like, we don't give a f***. Your internet privacy, we don't give a f***. Signed away. Healthcare, signed away. And it's kind of like what Ghost in the Shell was about, because they just took somebody's livelihood and did with what they want with it. Hey, I'm from the future! Actually, I'm just from the day that I'm actually editing this video, because I completely forgot something that was super good, and it's freaking in reference to the whole whitewashing thing. I think this movie handled that situation a lot better than just replacing the character. Now, this is a huge spoiler, although I've already put spoiler on the video, and you guys know that there's spoilers in here, but this is a huge one if you don't want to know what happens in the movie. Okay, so in the movie, throughout it, you hear that she goes by the name Major, which that is from the freaking anime, but her name is Major Mira something. I forget her last name that they use, but it's Major Mira is what you go by. And that's her name in this whole thing. So instead of using a Japanese name for this, because it's a white, you know, American character, they changed it. And they named her Mira, even though she was an android and whatever. But what you find out later in the movie is that her brain that was taken from somebody was actually a Japanese child, or probably teenager, and her name was the original character's name from the anime. If I'm not mistaken, pretty sure it was, because that's the one thing I noticed. I was like, oh man, I think that's the thing. And I checked online, and the first names are the same. I can't remember the last names in the movie, but I'm pretty sure that was an Easter egg in the whole thing, that they made it, and it all freaking made sense with the whole thing. Now, Hollywood, that doesn't mean you can go freaking whitewash every character just because you did a clever little thing here. I'm just giving you a little applause, because, I mean, I think everybody knew that they were going to Americanize this movie because it was a Japanese property. They were going to try to make it for an American audience. So that was expected, but it was a cool little Easter egg by doing that having the freaking, you know, teenager that they took the brain from, put it in this android, be the original character's name from the anime. Thought that was really cool. Alright, now back to the other time zone thingamabob. You know what, that's really all I'm going to say right now about this movie, because like I said, as I'm thinking about it, I feel like this is going to be one of those movies I need to see a second time to give it a proper judgment. So, we're doing the Juice Box double take! I wish I could actually just cut to another clip and be like, guys, I just saw this movie for a second time. But I think, you know, I'll just have to do it at a later video, or I'll just, you know, mention it on Twitter or something about what I thought about this movie for a second time. And I think I'm going to watch the anime again, or just for the first time in case I didn't watch it. I'm going to watch the anime and then rewatch this movie to really just say how I feel 100%. Because there was just too many factors going into tonight, you know, being kind of sleepy, not watching the anime, blah, blah, that I don't feel like I can give a 100% like definitive review on this movie. But if you are the kind of person that you're like, no, Juice, I need a number right now, I will say 6.5 out of 10, between 6 and 7 for sure. I don't know. I feel like if I rewatch this movie, I can definitely maybe bump it up to a 7 after a second watch, unless I really enjoy the anime, then catch all of this in the movie, then be like, oh shit, But I don't know, it seemed like I was in a theater with a bunch of the anime people, and some of them were like, oh yeah, it was pretty good here and there, the acting was good, I don't know, the anime was totally better. Literally heard that from somebody as I was walking out. So I don't know, maybe it wouldn't change anything. Anyways, guys and gals, I want to know what your thoughts are on this movie. Have you seen it? Do you plan on seeing it? Have you seen the anime? And do you think that's better than this movie? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Guys and gals, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with all your Ghost in the Shell buddies. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for all things nerdy and geeky on this channel. As always, I'm your host, JUICEbox. Remember, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself something. Have I had my daily dose of juice? See you guys next time. Bye!